Camp From Store This Not That, where we teach you what to store, what not to store, and how to use your food storage. Today I'm going to be teaching you about canning beans. It's really easy and it's so economical. When you're buying dry beans, it only takes about a half a cup of dry beans to make a full pint of cooked beans, costing under 25 cents for a whole pint of beans. So really a lot more economical than getting, for instance, instant beans or even buying canned beans, which costs about 80 cents for a can. So let's just get started and show you what to do. Today I'm making about 12 pints of beans. So I'm starting out with 4 pounds of dry beans. I've got them in my strainer, and I'm just going to quickly pull out all the broken ones. With black beans, it's really easy to tell if they're broken because they'll be white. They'll have white on them. And one of the things I found when you're getting them out is it seems like no matter how much you get out, you find more. I don't know that it's really super important that you get all the broken ones. You'll just have some broken ones in there. You're also looking for any stones. I've never found any stones. I usually buy triple cleaned beans, and I've never found any in there. So, but still always good to watch out for because they can break your teeth. So once you have picked out all of the little broken white pieces and you've looked through and see if there's any more, you're just going to turn on the water and you're just going to run the water, move the beans through with your hand, just getting off any dirt or grime or anything that can be in your beans that you don't want to eat. While you're doing that, you're going to find some more broken ones along the way. And I just do that until my water runs clear. Doesn't take very long to do that. You can also soak them and kind of just move them around if you want to do that. I just find that this method works the best for me. So once I'm all done getting them all nice and clean, I'm just going to pour them into my pan that I'm going to be cooking them in. I'm not cooking, that I'm going to be soaking them in. You want your pan to be big enough because your beans are going to double to triple in size, so your pan has to be big enough that they're not going to overflow when you do that. So I've got the beans in there. I'm just adding a little bit more water to top it off. And then I'm just going to set them aside for about 8 hours and let them fully plump up. There is another method you can do. It's called the quick soak method. With that method, you're just going to take these beans, put them on your stove, bring them to a boil, cover them, and set them aside for an hour. Or bring them to a boil for 2 minutes. And cover them and let them set aside. That is not the method I prefer unless I'm in a really big hurry. I think that they plump up better, and I don't have as much beans that crack and break when I'm cooking them when I do the slow method. And I also think that gives them a chance for the enzymes to break down a little bit, so it makes the beans easier to digest. So I'm just going to set my beans aside for 8 hours, and we're going to come back and show you what to do next. Now the beans have been soaking overnight, and we're just going to rinse them and get them ready for a little bit of cooking, just 30 minutes or so. So see that the water is black. That's because some of the pigment's been lost in the soaking process. That's perfectly normal. There we go, lots of great black beans that are soaked. One of the interesting things about beans that I found is if you soak them overnight, they're going to reach their full size before you do the cooking process. So it's really easy to gauge how many beans to put in your jars. So I'm just rinsing this until the water runs clear, and then we're going to put it in the pan. Alright, we're done rinsing, and I'm just going to quickly rinse my pan out and get any residual foam and things out from that before I put my beans back in. I'm just going to dump the beans in. Add water, and then put them on the stove to cook for, bring them to a boil and simmer them for 30 minutes before we put them in the jars. While the beans are simmering for 30 minutes, I forgot to tell you, if you put a tablespoon of vegetable oil in your water while the beans are cooking, you'll have virtually no foaming, which is great. But if you do have foaming, just scrape the foam off. Okay, while those are cooking, we're going to get our lids ready. Now when you're pressure canning, you don't need to wash your jars first as long as they're clean. I'm using new jars, so that makes them clean. I'm just going to take all these lids off and then come back and show you what else we're going to do while the beans are cooking. Now we're going to get our canner ready. By that I mean you're going to be pouring water in it. Water to a level that when it's filled with jars, it'll go the water level will go 2 to 3 inches up the bottom level of the jar. Unlike traditional canning, water bath canning, where you cover the jars with water, in pressure canning you're actually using the heat and the steam that are doing the work of heating up your food. So you don't need as much water. But you want to have enough water that the water doesn't evaporate during the canning process so that it breaks your jars. So for my canner, that means putting in a heaping gallon of water into my jar. And then when my jars are in, it raises the level up about 3 inches on my jars. You also are going to add about a tablespoon of white vinegar. What that's going to do is keep the outside of your jars from getting water spots on them. It's not a necessity, but it does make your jars look a lot better. Right, now we're going to move on to filling up our jars. Ready to fill our jars now. I like to drain out my beans before I load them, and then I put some fresh water in when I'm canning, so I've already done that. And the beans will absorb, will grow a little bit more, so I am putting up beans just to the bottom of my funnel. So you'll see it's just come to the bottom, and then I'm going to fill up the rest of this with water to 1 inch from the top. You can put salt in your beans if you want, but you don't have to when you're pressure canning. So that's totally up to you. And you also, if you don't want to just can plain beans, you can make all kinds of delicious beans. Chipotle beans, baked beans, navy beans, whatever kinds of beans you want and the flavors that you want. And then they're ready to go when you want to eat them. You just open and eat. So my lids have been simmering here. I'm going to just wipe off the top of my jars to make sure that there's no residual anything on them. And then I'm using my handy dandy lid lifter. It just is a little stick with a magnet in the bottom. Keeps your fingers from burning, and I did that a lot before I had one of these. You're just going to put the lids on, and then you're going to take a ring and finger tighten it. Not so tight that you can't get them off, and not so loose that they're going to come loose and the juices are going to come out when you're canning. So then you're just going to take these and you're going to load them up into your canner. Now we've got jars filled, lids on, rims on, canner loaded. We're ready to get started with the pressure canning process. Pressure canners in the old days used to be a little dangerous, but now they are pretty simple and danger-free as long as you're following the rules. Mine has clips that clip on, and I'm going to tighten my handles on opposite sides as tight as I can tighten them without making it so tight that I can't get them off when it's all done. So I'm tightening them up, and then I'm going to start heating up my water, which is going to cause the pressure, which is going to cook my stuff. Now, if you'll see, my canner has a pressure gauge, and I also have a pressure valve with this on it that has 5, 10, and 15 pounds pressure. At my elevation, I pressure can at 15 pounds pressure because I'm over 1,000 feet. So I'm just waiting for this to heat up, and I'll be able to tell when it's heating because I'll get a stream of steam that's going to come out my valve right here. And as soon as that steam starts coming out, I'm going to set my timer for 11 minutes. That gives it enough time for all the air, any extra air that might be in my canner, to get out. And then I'm going to put my valve on like this, and we're going to start the pressure process. Okay, it's been about 20 minutes since I started heating up my pressure canner. As you can see, we have a stream, not steady, but a stream of steam that's coming out the valve on the right-hand side. I've set my timer for 11 minutes, and during that 11 minutes, the steam will turn into a steady steam, meaning there's no air left in my canner. And I'll put my weight at 15 on and then start my timing. Because I am canning pints, pints take 75 minutes at 15 pounds pressure in order to safely can. If I'm doing quarts, it's 90 minutes for beans. So now it's just a waiting game. My timer's off. It's been 11 minutes. You see my pressure's already starting to rise. And I'm just going to put my weight on over the pressure valve so that it can start building the pressure up to 15 pounds, which is where I want it to can my beans. All right, hear that noise? That means we've reached 15 pounds pressure. The noise is caused and the rattling is caused when it's letting off extra pressure so that it does go above the 15 pounds pressure. Magic. What you want to do is you're going to want to turn your pressure canner, the heat down on a little bit. You only want it to rattle up 2 to 4 times a minute. If it's rattling constantly like this, that means a lot of steam is coming out, and it can, if too much steam comes out, break your jars. We don't want that to happen. So just a little, just put it down a little bit at a time until you get to the point where it's rattling only 2 to 4 times a minute. It will take you a little while to get used to that. If you accidentally go down too far and it's not rattling enough, luckily with these kind of pressure canners, that holds the pressure really well, and you have a few minutes leeway in there to get your pressure back up before it drops your temperature. But if your temperature does drop below 15 pounds pressure, you have to start the timing all over again. So you don't want it to go below 15 pounds pressure. So I'm turning mine down a little bit at a time here until we get it to the point where it's only rattling 2 to 4 times a minute. It's been an hour and 15 minutes. My timer's going off, and now I can shut my heat off. Then I'm just going to let it sit and let it cool down while my temperature goes all the way down to 0. That takes about 30 to 45 minutes. Do not open the top before then. Don't try to cool it down faster by setting it in ice water or anything else. This cooling down time is part of the processing time of your beans, and so you don't want to cut it short. It does take a little while, but it's just going to slowly cool down. The temperature is going to slowly drop so it gets all the way down to 0, at which time you can open your pressure canner. Well, our beans are done cooking. The timer went off. We've let them sit until our pressure got down to 0, and now we're ready to open and unveil the beans. In other words, have the big reveal. I'm just untightening them the way that I tightened them, and because the pressure's gone, I know that there's not going to be much steam, but you'll see that it's still nice and hot in there. I am using my handy dandy can remover, jar remover. It works so good. It's got it's rubberized on the bottom. When you take them out, you're not going to tip them. You'll see that they're still really bubbly and hot. You're going to be setting them down on either a cookie cooling rack or a towel so they're not sitting directly on your countertop. You're not going to tip them because you don't want to break the seal. Now you'll notice they are not sealed yet, but as they cool down, they will seal. You'll hear them pop and make noises. So set them down, have a little bit of space between them, and let them cool. You're going to leave them sit in the same spot for about 24 hours so they have time to totally cool down, and the seal will be set. And when you're all done doing that, then you can take the rings off, wash them. I usually wash the outside of my jars with soap and water, and then of course make sure, you want to make sure that you write the dates and what kind of product that you have in the jars. So that's all there is to canning. I hope you see that how quick and easy it is. You do need to make sure that you're using a pressure cooker, not a pressure canner. Follow the directions in a good canning book, and voila, you can have anything from plain beans to barbecued beans, depending on what you want to can. Well, that's it from Store This Not That. We hope you enjoyed our how-to bean class, and you're excited about trying to can beans on your own. We hope you join us often for more tutorials on using and eating your food storage. Bon appetit!